I want to pose a question to you, and then I want to pose a solution. The question is, should we incarcerate drug users, or should we send them to treatment? Now, something that helped me decide how my position would take on this topic was actually a presentation that someone was doing on seatbelts, seatbelt safety and traffic safety. And they asked this audience, this crowd, and said, how many deaths would be sufficient in a year for traffic accidents? What number would you feel good about? Some people said 20. And some people said 10. Some people said, well, 100 would probably be acceptable. And then the man asked something that was so profound. And he said, how many is sufficient for your family? Suddenly our jaws dropped, our hearts sunk a little bit, and we began to think about our own family members being lost in a tragic accident, and we all said 0 would be a good number. See, when we look at statistics and we see things from afar, we can sometimes disconnect our heart from the reality of the problem. So, in viewing this now, with the opioid crisis increasing, the CDC reports in a study that they did in 2016 that the opioid crisis and methamphetamine crisis is actually increasing and doesn't show signs of waning. That in every corner of America there is problems with drugs, and it seems to be increasing. So I want you to look at this problem as hitting close to home, as potentially a family problem. And with drug use on the rise, you probably have somebody or know someone that has been affected by the drug use problem in America. So how can we treat this problem? Well, I want to tell you that it'd be better to send to treatment. Now, why? Well, first reason is it's more cost effective. There's a study done by the National Drug Policy Commission in the United States that they said that for every $1 spent on cocaine treatment, it offered $7.48 of societal benefits. In other words, incarcerations, rests, taxpayer money, and different things. That it's actually long-term cheaper and better for society to get people off of drugs. Also, the time that they are spending being incarcerated compared to the same amount of time in treatment is actually cheaper. This study done by the Little Hoover Commission determined that in the state of California, if someone spends an average drug sentence for a serious drug offense, that the cost of their incarceration is $27,000. The cost of treatment for the same amount of time in a drug facility, residential program, $4,500. A drug treatment alternative program to prison in Brooklyn, New York, states that in New York, the average cost for an inmate to be in prison for 25 months for a drug offense is $64,338. The average for the same amount of time in a drug treatment facility in Brooklyn was $32,974. So it's actually cheaper on the taxpayer. But I also want to tell you that it is more effective. Brooklyn's DTAP program reports that those who went through the program and spent at least 2 years there found that the arrest rates were 26% lower than those who had gotten out of prison and just went directly into the streets. And that those who had finished the program were 67% less likely to return to prison than a group that had just left prison and went right out into the streets. So not only does it limit crime, it limits repetitive crime. Also, I think this is what the Bible would teach. The Bible teaches us that Jesus, in Luke 15, hosted dinners for sinners. That one of his things that he was accused of was that he spent times with publicans or tax collectors and harlots. that Jesus' heart was to connect with those who were sick and needed help. Now, nobody was more serious about sin, but also nobody was more serious about helping the sinner either. Jesus said in Matthew 5, if your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. If your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out. But he goes on to tell us where the result or where the source of sin comes from, and that's from the heart. Paul echoes this in the scripture where he says, laws won't save. Laws are only the schoolmaster that brings us to Christ. In other words, laws just tell us we have a problem, but they don't get close to the solution. That it is Christ that touches the heart and that can change the heart. Laws don't save, God does. Jeremiah 31 says that God couldn't do anything with the people of Israel, so he decided that he was going to give them a heart transplant. And that's what treatment centers do, especially faith-based ones. There's a lady at our church named Missy. She heads up our outreach program. She had started doing drugs from a very young age with her dad, actually. She got older and got into exotic dancing and then into prostitution. Her life spun out of control and she got addicted to drugs. As she was addicted to drugs, she got court-ordered to Teen Challenge. She ends up getting saved, gets off drugs, and is now heading up our outreach ministry called Spa City Kids. And now she's working at Teen Challenge, helping other people get off drugs. I want to submit to you that not only is it more cost-effective and more effective, but it's the way God would have things to be done. So I want to encourage you, and I want to thank you for your time, and I want to encourage you that you too would consider drug treatment the better option than incarceration. Thank you so much. Also, thank you guys for sitting in here with me being